Welcome to Queers and Quills, the official podcast. I'm audiobook narrator Kirt Graves. Every episode, I invite an attending author or narrator to join me for a one-on-one conversation about their lives and their art, so attendees and readers from across the world can get to know them not only as professionals, but as people. Joining me today is Jeffrey K. Davenport. Jeffrey is the author of the romance thriller Somewhere in the Gray Area and the recently released romantic comedy Meet Me in the Sky. He advocates for the much-deserved delivery of marginalized stories to readers and has always made it his mission to take underrepresented voices and place them at the forefront of exciting narratives. An Atlanta native and New York resident, he loves to travel, explore new music, and expand his ability to create in new ways. And I look forward to learning what some of those ways are. Welcome to the podcast, Jeffrey.
Thank you, Kurt. How are you today?
I'm doing well. Thank you for taking the time to do this. So let's start at the beginning, or wherever in the story it makes sense. Tell us your author origin story. How did we get here? How are we talking about queer books today?
Oh my God. An overactive imagination.
All right.
From early on. That's really where it all began. I always, as a kid, I had a huge imagination, and it was just too much to keep into my head. I would always play around in this imaginary world outside of myself. I always loved writing. I always loved creating stories. Growing up, I loved essays. I loved language arts in grade school. And it just got to a point where I was like, all of this cannot fit in my head anymore. It has to be written down somewhere, which just led to me creating all kinds of stories growing up. And coming into, my adolescent years and coming into my own queer identity, I sought out something that could fulfill that part of me. And growing up in the South, and growing up in a Christian household, those things weren't always very accessible. And even when they were at the time, we didn't have queer stories that had a lot of joy in them as well. Yeah. So it's hard to imagine that life for yourself when you don't see it. So that sparked something in me to want to create those stories. I'm happy to say now we have so many more queer stories that highlight joy and highlight a future that a lot of us didn't really see possible growing up. And I'm glad to have a little bit of something to do with it, that I was able to put a little bit, of something out there that hopefully people can take in and say, wow, this is something that I never thought that I would see someone who looks like me or acts like me or sounds like me or feels the things that I do at the forefront of these stories. So that's a little bit of that journey from, that kid creating people in his head, to having these really fun characters to write and experience stories.
Well, and it's certainly true that we do see a lot more stories featuring queer characters. There's a long way to go on, I think, some more intersectional stories. And you say in your bio that's important to you. Do you want to expand a little bit more on why?
Yeah, absolutely. There is, for me, I have a very particular story of, coming into my own queer identity. And just like I have that, everyone else, who goes through these things has their own story. And they, while we are all in a camaraderie in that sense, it's also very, very different. And the sad thing is, even when we can all we can have this thing in common, there's just so much, I don't know the word. There's not enough acceptance even within our own community, for those who may not walk that same life that you do.
Right.
I think intersectionality is important because it kind of bridges the gap that is being divided amongst us, especially now at this time in our country and this time in our history. Trans allies are, under attack. Women are under attack. They're trying to divide us, and I want to be a part of a community that brings people together, that makes it understood that we're fighting the same fight. We're fighting a fight together. we can accomplish so much more together than we can separately. And I really want to highlight where we've come from. I want to highlight our history, because that's how we move forward to a brighter future. I think that it gets scary when we try to erase the history of our camaraderie and how far we've come and the things that we've had to overcome together as a group. Um, it's something that we cannot let go of because it's the blueprint for a brighter future.
Yeah.
So I hope to highlight that with characters who I haven't been through what they've been through, but I've seen it, and I can go back in our history and understand a little bit more about what their struggle has been and highlight those points, and express that to people who may not get it.
Yeah.
But I think that we could all use a lot more empathy for one another. So I hope that I can play a little bit of a role in that.
Yeah, I'm glad you just said empathy because that's what I was thinking about. Because, as queer people, we are not immune to falling victim to the model of what we've seen our whole
Right.
lives, which is often some sort of caste system, some sort of social group, some sort of division, uh, trying to find the ways in which you can feel superior to other people.
Right.
And that,
Exactly.
those dynamics exist in the queer community as well. I wish they didn't. I wish we had learned our lessons that when we
Right.
were the oppressed, we learned not to oppress, but we
Right.
don't. And then we're not taught our own histories. And then the next generation makes the same mistakes all over again, which is why books are such a fantastic way to build empathy in people because they give us that opportunity to read about an experience that isn't our own and understand a part of the world that we wouldn't ever get to walk through ourselves. Um, but that takes some effort. That takes some mental effort. You have to actually think of it in terms of that, and you have to actually then go do the work of reading stories that are not a perfect reflection of the life that you have lived.
Exactly. Exactly. I agree 100%. I think that it's, the first step is, gaining the knowledge. And that's something that, we can all contribute to, making sure that our history is being taught, that, the things that are going on around us are being brought to light. Stories aren't being washed away. That's just the first step. Like you said, it does take effort, to make equity. And that's really what we need right now is equity and the understanding that you know certain parts of our community need a little bit more than what you may need or what I may need. We just have to do our part to make sure that we are creating community, and fighting off division.
Yeah, yeah. I'd love to hear a little bit more about the books that you have out already, and if you wanted to tell us about anything that's coming down the pike.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. So, Somewhere in the Gray Area was my debut novel, that came out in 2023. I've really always grown up loving spies and like secret ops. Um, that was, I had sat on the idea for a long time, but the plot really just didn't click for me. I had a lot of vibes, had a lot of fun characters, but I just did not really have much of a plot. And I sat on it for so long, and eventually one day it clicked for me. Just kind of The whole story kind of rounded itself out. There was still a lot of work to do, but I could really see a vision for it. So somewhere in the gray area, our main character James is a junior in college, and he gets caught up in this government cover up. But his boss is looking into some things that he shouldn't have been. He gets murdered along with all of his intern class. So he's the only one remaining, and he's just trying to get to the bottom of what happened to his boss, what was he looking into, and who would want so badly to cover these things up, that they would murder 13 other people. Yeah, yeah, it's intense. And he finds camaraderie with a group of mercenaries who are tasked with keeping him alive and also finding out what his boss is digging into, which leads us to a little bit of a romance with the leader of the group. So it was fun to be able to have this action suspense thriller because that's a part of me that I've always had, and I've always craved that rush, and also being able to write queer romance between these two very troubled guys, who are just trying to navigate their own grief in their own life, even though they come from two very different walks of life. They have so many similarities, so we learn a lot about where they come from and also maybe where they're going after all of the events that take place. Um, and after Somewhere in the Gray Area, I was really in tune to doing rom com. And
Needed a break, needed to do
I
something a little
I
different.
needed yeah, a little bit different. I can't. I really wish I could remember. A song came on, and I can't remember what song it was. But it was very like early 2000s rom com opening credits, and I was listening to it in the car, and that's where a lot of my ideas do come from, is from listening to music. I see a scene in my head first, just based off of what I'm hearing. Um, that's just kind of one way that I just kind of dive into a story. And I got the idea of two guys being stuck in an airport for days on end, and just finding community with one another, just trying to get through one of the most grueling places sometimes for us. It's just chaos all the time. So Meet Me in the Sky took place with Billy and Michael. Billy is a young divorcee. He is, or almost divorcee. He is on his way to his sister's wedding, which he is kind of orchestrating. He's very type A, and you see at the beginning of the book, he's just having a rough go at it, going through the airport and trying to get to where he needs to get to. And he runs into Michael, who is on his way to his estranged father's funeral. His father left his family when he was very young. So he's going through his own kind of grief or lack thereof. And they find comfort in one another to deal with their own internal uh, trials and tribulations that they're going through. And in that comfort, they find a little bit of love between one another as they're stuck for days on end at John F. Kennedy Airport, which is less than thrilling. But it was fun to be able to have them in one location for such a long time. That was probably one of the biggest challenges of the book, was like, where do you go next? What do you they're in the airport for 5 days straight.
Yeah.
You know, what do you do? But it was a fun challenge, and it was exciting to be able to take from real life and get real creative, and make sure that, you know, those things play into their story and play into who these characters are as well. So you get to learn so much about them, and they were just so much fun to write.
Yeah.
But yeah, that is my portfolio right now. Um, I've got a couple of things coming up. You will probably see a little bit more of Billy and Michael soon.
Okay. All right.
I won't say too much about it, but we've got some things coming from that. But a lot of fun ideas. I really want to dive into some historical romance, a little bit more thriller. But there's a lot of ideas of what's to come. I want to touch on a lot of things, and I especially want to, kind of like what we talked about earlier with dealing with intersectionality. I want to be able to expand my character profiles a little bit more and learn a lot more, and be able to bring that knowledge to the forefront. Because while, you know, this is a joy to be able to do, I love to be able to write and tell these stories. I do take it seriously as work and as doing a job and a service to tell queer stories, not just ones that reflect what I've been through, but ones that are that reflect the other people in my community as well.
Yeah. That's great. I'm curious if, besides the music that inspires you, if there are any particular like media or literary influences that have inspired or influenced you as you've started your writing journey.
Absolutely. I consume media like nobody's business. I'm always either watching something, reading something, listening to something. I can't be left alone with my own thoughts. That seems to be
I say that all the time. I say that all the time.
right. I have
Yeah.
something has to be going on.
Like no good can come from that.
No
Being
good can
left
come
alone
from
with my
it.
own thoughts. So
I go to the movies a lot. I invested in AMC A List. It's
okay.
like four movies a month or 4 movies a week for $25. So I was like, I have to.
Uh-huh.
Um, I was inspired by a lot of rom-coms growing up. Notting Hill, The Proposal. Oh gosh, Clueless. A lot of those things growing up. Those were like
Uh-huh.
I needed it constantly. Um, I read a lot of James Baldwin when I was in high school. A lot of poetry from Langston Hughes as well. Casey McQuiston, Allison Cochran, they really got me into reading a lot more queer stories in my adulthood.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, just I anything that sparks slight interest, even a little bit. I love any sort of queer story. I like to dive in. Anything a little bit different too, a little bit, that I haven't really seen before.
Right.
Because I don't want to replicate the same things over and over again with my art either. So I like to dive into something that is maybe off the beaten path a little bit, which is why I'm not very good with not reading synopsis before I dive into something. Some people can do it, and I am very envious of it, but I need to know what's happening. I think it's a little bit of the control freak in me that gets me going. Yeah, no, it's a very eclectic group of things that I like to spend time with,
Yeah.
media-wise.
Very cool. Well, Jeffrey, I've also invited you here to play a game. Are you ready
Absolutely.
for that?
Yeah, let's
Uh,
dive right in.
all right.
Let's
So the
begin.
rules of the game are simple. I have a deck of cards, and on each card is a question. The questions are aiming to learn more about you as a person. So some are biographical, some are hypothetical, some are just plain silly. But I will not be picking the questions you're going to answer. Fate is. I'm going to deal 3
Ah,
cards every round. You choose one, and whatever card you pick, you are agreeing to answer, with a couple of exceptions. So if you don't want to answer a question, you have 2 opportunities to switch things up. You can turn the tables on me one time, forcing me to answer the question, or you can also discard a personal question in favor of answering a more bookish question from our white deck. But then you only get dealt 1 card and you have to answer it.
all right.
Are you ready to
Okay,
play?
I'm ready. Let's
Here
do
we
it.
go. Card 1, card 2, or card 3?
Let's go card 2.
All right. If you were a villain or criminal mastermind, what would be your calling card?
Ooh, I think something a little silly. You know how in like a cartoon and you go to like the villain's lair
Uh-huh.
and you just hear that big thunder and crackle of lightning? I think that, but just like over the top. The second I walk into a room, that's it. Just constantly.
Uh-huh.
I think that would be my calling card. That's it.
I love that. To the point where people are like,
Classic setting.
does it end or do we
No,
just
no,
do we just
exactly.
keep going?
It's,
Like, are we supposed to talk over it? What?
yeah, there's like no, just keep going. That just
Yeah.
happens.
Okay.
Don't worry about that.
I'm sorry. What did you say? The money in the bag? I can't. Can we turn down the thunder? Yeah,
Exactly.
I love that. All right. Card 1, card 2, or card 3?
Let's go card 1 this time.
All right. Ooh, if you were to die and come back as a person or thing, what do you think it would be?
As a person or a thing? Everything that I'm thinking of is food. That's crazy.
So a short second life
I
is
think a very short
consumed
second
quickly.
life. Yeah, I'm thinking pastry. I'm thinking like a Jaffa cake or some sort of tough pastry. I don't know. That does seem like I think
Oh,
that I have done so much damage to the puff pastry community that it would only be fitting that I would come back as said puff pastry.
Damage.
Yeah.
I love that. Buttery, many
Hmm.
layers. I think that says a
Yeah.
lot about you.
Uh-huh. Yep, yep,
Yeah.
yep.
All right, card 1, card 2, or card 3.
Okay. Let's go card 3.
What do you consider the most overrated virtue?
I'm going to flip that one on you.
All right, this might be controversial. I think the most overrated virtue is honesty.
Ooh, that actually was at the forefront of my mind, but I
Okay.
couldn't back it up.
I
So
think
why do
there
you
are
think that?
plenty of times when being
Yeah.
honest is not the most kind or respectful
Hmm.
thing to do.
Yeah.
And so I think it is better to assess the situation and decide if honesty is the best policy, because I think there are times when it isn't.
I agree. I agree with you 100%. Sometimes it's just especially when you know who you're dealing with,
Yeah.
it's not the best idea for any given situation. So
And
I
there are
can
plenty of times when it is. Like, don't get, I'm
right.
not saying like, yes, become a, a
Compulsive
pathological
liar.
liar. Like
Yeah.
that's not what I'm saying. But like, I think it's better to know when to be honest than to just be honest all the time.
Right.
I
Right.
think
You
that's
could
better.
definitely substitute honesty for kindness.
Yeah.
Sometimes.
Yeah. Because a lot of
I
times
agree.
it doesn't matter what you really think or what, your opinion. And that's another thing is people get opinions mixed up with truthfulness. And it's like, no. Sharing an opinion is not the same as being honest. That's just saying something that didn't need to be said. So, all right. I think we have time for 2 more rounds here. So card 1, card 2, or card 3.
Card 1.
All right. Ooh, you're dying a lot in this game. If you were to die tomorrow, what little thing would you regret not doing?
Thing would I regret not doing? I don't know, maybe skydiving, which
Ooh.
I've been very anti skydiving my entire life. I'm like that nothing about it sounds fun to me.
Mhm.
I'm afraid of heights. I have horrible anxiety. I'm just not gonna have fun the entire time. But it's growing on me in the tiniest way,
Okay.
and I feel like maybe or like flying a helicopter. I don't know.
Yeah.
I think I'm afraid of being in the sky.
Sure.
Funny enough.
Which is very reasonable. Well, it's why you wrote a whole book about being in an airport instead of
Correct.
instead of
Exactly.
a
It
plane.
was my suppressed feelings of not wanting to get on a plane.
Yeah. I think we do some at a certain point we reach an age where like our anxieties that are based in self-preservation stop mattering
Yeah.
so much because you're like, well,
Yes.
I've lived a life. If I
I've
went at
lived a
this
life.
point, like
Exactly.
at least I
Right.
left
That's
something
exactly
behind.
right. That's exactly my sentiment. And I'm like, all right, well,
you
maybe I
know,
could do it. I don't know. We'll
right?
see.
Like I'll probably survive.
And if I don't, I wouldn't know the difference.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Card 1, card 2, or card 3.
Okay, let's end on card 2.
All right. When you think about success, who comes to mind and why?
Oh, Beyonce?
Yeah. You know what? That question's come up a few times, and people really, really have to think about it. So I love that you were like, no, I know. I know.
100%. Well, genuinely, I've been a Beyonce fan my entire life. And, all jokes aside, she is genuinely one of the most hardworking people that I understand. I love
Uh-huh.
watching her craft. I love watching her work. And it has inspired me so much. It's hard for me sometimes to be able to focus and to see the other side of things when, trying to work through a project or in any scenario. It doesn't even necessarily have to do with, writing and creating. It's anything. Sometimes I need an extra push and, I ask myself, what would Beyonce do? You know, I know my capabilities and I know what I am able to bring to the table for myself. And so setting certain expectations for myself is something that's really important. Because I create that on my own.
Uh-huh.
No one is going to create these steps for you to move forward in your life, or to motivate you on the day-to-day basis. That's something that's really important that I always have to have in the back of my head. You gotta do A, B, and C. If you fail in any scenario, and it's okay to fail, but I need you to know that if you do fail, it is on you.
Uh-huh.
You had the tools, you had the opportunity. And if you don't have the tools and the opportunity, then let's find those tools and those opportunities opportunities because you know what you want, you know what your end goal is. So let's set yourself up for success. And once you have those tools, all you have to do is have the motivation behind it. But that's something that's super important to me and something that was instilled in me from watching her work so much and so diligently.
I also love that she is unapologetic about holding other people to her high standards.
Yes.
It's a great example of, like, it's okay to do that. And if those people don't want to reach your standards, it's okay to let them go.
Exactly.
And find some other people. So
right, because you want that goal no matter what. So if you're not going to help me in getting to that goal, then you gotta go.
Right. Yeah. Well, Jeffrey, thank you so much for taking the time to do this. I so appreciate it. And I'm so excited to meet you in just a few weeks now. Jeez.
Yeah. Very soon. We'll see everybody.
I know.
It's going to be crazy, but I appreciate you having me. Thank you so much.
It was my pleasure. And thank you, listeners, for joining us for Queers and Quills, the official podcast. If you're already signed up to attend Queers and Quills, make sure to say hello to me and to Jeffrey at the Oregon Convention Center in May. And if you're not, follow Queers. Queers and Quills, the official podcast, is produced and hosted by Kirt Graves, in coordination with Mahogany Mail and Marley Valentine. All copyrighted material is shared with permission. Music and sound effects are licensed through Storyblocks Audio. All opinions shared are those of the individuals and do not reflect the positions or policies of any company or organization with which they happen to be associated.